Well, let's get started. My name is Rick, and I am the Director of Fellowship Recruitment here at Activate. In my role, I inspire and encourage entrepreneurial-minded scientists and engineers to apply to the Activate Fellowship to bring your innovation to market. With me today is Nirwan, our Fellowship Manager from our Houston community, as well as Ava, our Fellowship Recruitment Intern for the summer and fall, and our Fellowship, and who will be both supporting me, like I said earlier, to answer your questions and make sure the webinar goes smoothly. Just some housekeeping items. The chat function is disabled, but you can put your questions in the Q&A section. We're going to use that as our means of communicating with you all. And one of us will try to respond to you and make sure that your question is answered. If your question isn't answered, don't take it personally. Please feel free to email us later at apply@activate.org if you still have additional questions. We're also going to have a feedback survey after this. Your survey, your feedback is really important to us. We really take it seriously. We review it to make things better for future webinars. So please, once you receive that, we just ask that you do fill that out, and that should be part of the post-webinar process. But let's talk about what we're going to go over today. I'm going to give you a big overview of our story, where we, our history, why we exist. We're going to talk more in detail about what the fellowship offers you, the benefits of the fellowship, and then we're going to go into our impacts and results so far. We've been around for, this will be our 12th cohort. So we've been around for a little while now. We've got some really great outcomes and results that we're really proud of that we want to share. And then we'll go over our application timeline and what we look for in a candidate. So hopefully that'll just get you thinking about it and what we're looking for, and hopefully answer a lot of your questions. And then finally, we'll go through your questions in Q&A. Unfortunately, we can't unmute you in this setting, but you can put your question, like I said, in the chat of the Q&A if it comes up during that time. Okay, so our story and purpose. This is really where we're just going to give you a little bit about why we exist, what our mission is, and start there. So this is our vision and mission statement. We empower scientists and engineers to invent the world by bringing their research to market. So what does that mean? We saw a gap in support for early stage entrepreneurial scientists, and we built this fellowship to meet that need. We created a pathway for scientists whose research maybe was a little bit too applied for basic science, but was too immature for industry, and so they were often at an impasse, left with really no career path that really satisfied them. So our fellowship is an intentional path that enables them, scientists and engineers like yourselves, to transform an idea into an actual product that addresses real and profound societal needs. So the Activate Fellowship is the premier program for scientists who are on that mission. We exist to support our fellows, full stop. Our job is to support you in your transformation from scientist to entrepreneur so that you can then ensure your innovation makes an impact. This picture is from our most recent retreat in June, welcoming our newest cohort. It includes our fellows as well as Activate staff. I just love this because it really just shows the most important aspect of our fellowship, which is community. At this event, we welcomed our 47 new fellows who are creating 39 companies across 29 cities in 9 states. But most importantly, it just is so valuable to see the impact of the community coming together from day one. You're going to hear about that a lot every time you come to one of our webinars. Anytime you talk to someone involved in Activate, you're going to talk about that importance of building community about the program, which really makes us stand out from other programs that are out there. We understand that entrepreneurship can be lonely, but from day one as an Activate Fellow, you have a cohort that you're on this journey with, as well as many people who came before you that will support you as you transition from scientist to CEO. So the goal of our program is to support our fellows, like I said, and we can do this best because we do not take any equity from your company to participate. This gives us the opportunity to focus on helping you as an individual achieve your milestones and goals, and for you to develop your technology and build your company at the same time. We also help you achieve building your hard tech minimum viable product, or MVP, or a prototype while you're in the fellowship. We want to see the product come to life so that you can demonstrate it to investors for when you are ready to scale up your product. We work to support you so that your product will have an impact on the world to help address and solve the biggest challenges our world is facing today and beyond. So that one day you can have an impact like Atasha Cave from our first cohort in 2015. Atasha started in our Berkeley office, and she founded the company called 12, along with two other co-founders. 12 is, if you haven't heard of it, they transform carbon emissions into critical chemicals, materials, and fuel that today are made from fossil fuels. Her innovation came out of Stanford while she was a graduate student. And they got some early funding, maybe in the beginning, maybe some SBIR, some STTR, some small business grants from the government. But really, investors really needed to see that, that her science worked and that her prototype worked before giving them additional funding and resources. So Tasha applied, she got into the program and took the 2 years in the fellowship to develop that technology and build her team and her company. And now, 12 years later, well, 10 years later, I guess, she has 200 employees and has excelled and taken her innovation from graduate school and built this company successfully out of that. And hopefully you will one day too. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Ava to go through the next couple sections. So Ava, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rick. So this next couple of sections is going to provide an overview of the Activate Fellowship, what it offers and how it operates, and also some of the experiences and some really cool deliverables and impact and results of the fellows as well. So let's talk about our model. So this slide really shows the core of the Activate Fellowship, how we support fellows from the early stage of their innovation and really through market readiness as well. So you're really embedded in the community. So fellows join a network of peers, of mentors, of experts who really understand the unique challenges of building a science-based venture. That community becomes really a sounding board and source of encouragement throughout the fellowship. Getting money to iterate your venture. So we provide the funding that really allows fellows to focus full time on your innovation. So it's about giving you resources to run experiments, test prototypes, and really de-risk your technology so that you can, like I said, run your own venture. Developing skills. So along the tongue twister, along the side, the technical process, fellows build leadership and entrepreneurial skills. Over the course of the 2 years of the fellowship, you really gain training and experience that really prepares you not just really to invent, but really to lead your organization and your team. So then we love to talk about leading your path to market. So by the end of the fellowship, you're really equipped with the connections, the partnerships, and really the strategic guidance that can bring your technology out of the lab and into the world where you can really make a real world cemented impact. So the Activate Fellowship, the whole model is really something so holistic. It's not just about funding or mentorship in isolation, but it's really about combining all of these elements into a structured pathway into the world. So with that said, let's talk about how this all works. So time and funding. So the fellowship with Activate lasts for 2 years. All fellows receive a $100,000 annual living stipend, plus health insurance, travel allowance, and relocation support if needed. In addition, each fellow gets a $100,000 R&D fund to put directly towards advancing your technology. That financial support is designed to remove some barriers that can come with entrepreneurship, which can really allow fellows to focus entirely on their project. Community. So like I said, fellows do not work in isolation. They're supported by Activate staff, managing directors, along with a huge network of scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. But beyond that, the fellowship is really a vibrant community. It's a community of alumni, and that continues to be a pretty vital resource long after the 2-year fellowship is over. So world-class tools for scientists. Activate provides entrepreneurial education that's specifically designed for scientists who are looking to become first-time founders. So that includes a tailored curriculum, one-on-one mentorship, intensive workouts, professional development opportunities. And on the research side, fellows gain access to labs and equipment to retain your rights to the company as well. And these partnerships overall really ensure that fellows can accelerate their tech development without compromising anything throughout the course of your innovation. So in short, all fellows get the time, the funding, the network, and the tools they need to take from science, from idea to impact. So let's talk more about the fellowship in some more detail. So on a weekly basis, fellows participate in professional development that's really tailored from the scientist to entrepreneurship journey. So that includes educational content, opportunities to hear directly from speakers, from fellow founders. Fellows can also build connections through social bonding, much like Rick had talked about earlier, from building with their cohort to alumni to the Activate team. There are small group and one-on-one meetings with investors, with partners, and government program managers as well. On a monthly basis, each fellow has one-on-one mentorship check-ins, and those provide more structured time to reflect on process, progress, discussing some challenges, and really getting some tailored guidance to keep your venture moving forward. So then on a quarterly basis, there are advisory board meetings that can bring people together to give feedback, ask some harder questions, and really help shape the path of your project. And then finally, I know this is a lot, guys, bear with me. Annually, fellows participate in reflection mentorship meetings. And so that also includes the retreat for new fellows, where really the entirety of the community come together. And a lot of those moments are about learning, networking, and celebrating progress. So in short, the fellowship is not just about funding. When I was in grad school, I had a professor that always reiterated that your network is your net worth. And we really hone in on that within the Activate Fellowship. It's something structured, it's something supportive, and it's really designed to help not just your technology grow, but your growth as a leadership as well. So the next slide, we're going to talk about how really the breadth of our innovation that Activate supports and the kind of challenges that our fellows are tackling. So science and technology can change everything. We need science, right? So our fellows are working at the frontier of 16 key verticals that can represent the future of a more resilient economy. So I'm not going to go over all the verticals. You can find it online at our website, activate.org/verticals, but this includes advanced manufacturing, robotics, carbon management, chemistry materials, climate and earth resources, ocean tech, and a whole width of so much more. But really across all of these sectors, fellows are rethinking how we generate and store energy, how we grow food, how we design materials, how we extract resources, and really how we can address climate change on a global scale. So like I had said, and I'll keep repeating this, that fellows do not work in isolation. Activate really cements a coalition of funders, of industry advisors, and experts who can really provide that mentorship and guidance for you. So the key point is that really, no matter which of these 16 verticals that you're in, if you're a scientist, you're an engineer who's working on a hard tech innovation that can make the world more sustainable, more resilient, more equitable, you will find a place at Activate. So moving forward, some of the people that you'll work closely, like I had mentioned, Activate is really close with the amount of tailored support that you receive. So each fellow is supported by a local fellowship team across all of our 5 communities. So a fellowship manager, a fellowship associate, who really are your go-tos for guidance, for logistics, and day-to-day problem solving. They really ensure that you're making a lot of that steady progress and helping you get the most and extract the most out of the fellowship. So you'll work with ecosystem and investment teams, and these teams, like I had said, with our verticals, they span all these technology sectors: climate, energy, computing, life sciences, and more. So all of these partner types, from corporations to investors, their role is really to help you to have access to the right network, have access to the right resources to advance your venture fully. So the point here really, if we keep talking about, you're not working in isolation, you're not doing this alone, you have a dedicated team working alongside of you, invested in your success really every step of the way. So with that said, let's look more at our community map. Activate isn't just a program, it's a national community. So we've built a network of the world's top scientists and entrepreneurs distributed across 5 fellowship communities, and each community is deeply connected to leading researchers and institutions and innovation ecosystems. So we first started, our community launched in Berkeley in 2015, followed by Boston a few years later. And in 2021, we expanded to Activate New York. And we also launched Activate Anywhere, which supports fellows who may not necessarily want to relocate, but want to have the same access to resources and mentorship. And most recently, in 2023, we launched Activate Houston. So that really expands our presence into a region with incredible energy and industrial expertise as well, But really across all of these communities, you're embedded in a vibrant ecosystem with access to world-class facilities, mentors, and national level partnerships. And so the big takeaway is that really, regardless of what community you join, you become part of a national, increasingly connected network of people providing you with resources along the way. So that brings us into a really next exciting slide on our impact and results. So since 2015, there have been almost 300 Activate Fellows that have created almost 240 science-based companies, and together they've raised over $4 billion in follow-on funding and created over almost 3,000 American jobs and launching products into the market. On top of that, 97% of these companies are still active today. So what I love, love, love about this slide is that the results really speak for themselves. It's a model that clearly works, and which leads me into another favorite slide, is some products and milestones. So this slide really highlights products by our fellows that really shows the impact that a lot of our fellows have had. Umaro, I was lucky to work for a food startup several years ago where I tried Umaro. It's a plant-based bacon made with protein from ocean farmed seaweed. It's incredible. It's an amazing, amazing product. It's delicious, it's crunchy, it's salty. It's one of the most sustainable protein sources in the world. Then we have Gradient. Gradient has created a commercial grade heat pump that's 50% more efficient than traditional AC units and has been helping to decarbonize cooling. Then we have Melinda, which is in the chemicals industry, has pioneered a closed loop system to recover and reuse carbon fiber composites that can reduce waste for high performance materials. But what I really love about this slide is that the key takeaway is that our fellows achieve these kinds of products from demonstrating from an early stage startup that they are turning something that's really a product driven company. And so with that said, I will now pass it back to Rick to go over our application timeline and some more specifics on what we look for in our fellows.
Great, thanks, Eva. All right, let's go over the timeline. So as you can see, we open our application today. Again, really excited about that. So please go to our website. Hopefully you received an email if you signed up for our through our applicant interest form. Our application closes on October 28th. That is the final deadline this year. We are not extending it. In the past, we have done some extensions. I just want to reiterate, October 28th is the final deadline that we are having this year. So please get your application in by that day. Once applications close, we spend the winter doing a review. We've got subject matter experts that we recruit. We have a selection committee for each community who are reviewing applications and making decisions on who's met the criteria, who's going to move forward in the process. If you make it to our video interviews in January and February, you're considered a semi-finalist, and you'll get to meet with the selection committee to go over more of your information about your technology, more about your reasons for wanting the Activate Fellowship Program. And if you make it past that round, we have our finalist week, which is taking place March 9th to 13th in 2026 this year. That is very similar to an opportunity for you to basically pitch your company to a room, a virtual room full of our subject matter experts, as well as selection committees to help them make their final decisions. And if you are selected, you'd be notified around April, and you would start your fellowship in June. So that's why we want you to think about it now. It takes many months to become a fellow, so just make sure that you understand that once you are a fellow in June, you're committing to this full time and ready to move forward to start your company. So what do we look for in fellows? What types of folks? We really want people who are committed, driven scientists and engineers who are really, not just looking for the funding aspect and the money. That you're really knowledgeable in your tech area. You're motivated to grow into entrepreneurs, and you're excited to participate in everything that the fellowship is offering. So that's the community, that's the educational component, and then you really want to, participate in all the programming that our communities are putting together for you. The connections are going to be important for you to, continue to grow and scale up, and you have the ability to really develop that credible technology that's going to actually work and be impactful, and that aligns with our mission of science for good and is aligned with one of our 16 verticals that Ava mentioned earlier. And then finally, just ask yourself, would receiving this fellowship support make a difference to help you move your technology forward and build your company? And then this has come up in a lot of the questions. I've been trying to look in the chat as as Ava was talking, and a lot of this is really covered in our eligibility. Our basic eligibility requirements are here, so please listen carefully as I go through these with you. You must have a bachelor's degree in 4+ years of post-baccalaureate scientific research, engineering, or technology development experience. So this means you do not need a PhD, but you must hit the requirement of having a bachelor's degree and 4+ years of experience, technical experience, to be eligible to apply. So make sure you at least hit that basic requirement before submitting an application. The second bullet is long, but what it basically means is that this is your first time as a founder. So if you've already created a company, sold it, moved on, expanded it, scaled up, then we're not here. We're really here to support that first time founder who would really benefit from, again, that educational component, the connections. If you've already done it, you probably wouldn't need us for all of those other components. You must be committed full time to the proposed project or company if awarded the fellowship. Typically, we see a lot of people coming out of again, you don't need a PhD, but we often see a lot of people coming out of their PhD program. They might apply in their senior year of their PhD program, knowing that they want to spin out of the university, work full time after they graduate to start this company, continue to develop the technology, because we do expect that you're full time. That's what we consider at least 32 hours a week. Obviously, entrepreneurship is often more than that, but that is our minimum of hours per week that we're looking for. So because we understand that there's grants and things that you might have received that you want to work on. But again, you must be fully committed. This is your full-time job. You can't be like, still in school and doing this. It's just too much. You must be legally able to work in the US for the duration of the fellowship. That means that we do accept foreign nationals. So you do not only have to be a US citizen or permanent resident. We do accept it, but you must be on a visa, a work visa, in order to participate in the 2-year fellowship. And we have different resources on our FAQs that we can point to help you think about that. But we really do encourage you to talk to an immigration lawyer as soon as possible to figure out what your options are for your particular situation, because there's so many different rules and they're changing all the time. So we want to make sure that you're talking to a lawyer about what those options are for you. So we encourage you to do that. And then you must be able to communicate proficiently in English. And then to be eligible, your proposed project or company has to be based in the physical or biological science or related engineering disciplines. We're really here to help science entrepreneurs specifically. You must be in development and not ready for full-scale products. So, our sweet spot is what we always say is pretty much proof of concept, maybe some customer discovery, maybe some market research, but really early stage. We don't expect you to come in ready to launch your product, right? If you've made it that far, then you probably, again, wouldn't need us. You're already well on your path to success. Which goes into the last point, which is you must not have raised more than $2 million in debt or equity funding from non-governmental sources. We encourage you to apply to as many SBIRs, STTRs from the government. That number is not limited, but if you've already received $2 million from investors, then again, you're ready. Like, you're there and you are ready to launch. And so that is past our sweet spot, which is really helping those early stage entrepreneurs just creating their prototype, their MVP through the fellowship, really. Although some fellows do come in with a prototype, it just depends on how far you are at with your company. So as long as you think, again, that this whole program with all of its components would benefit your company, then you should apply. Okay. So ways to prepare and think about getting ready to apply to the program. Just talk to people, especially people outside of academia, network, and find people who could add value to your project. Maybe someone who's gone on the entrepreneurial journey and you just really want to learn how they got there, what things would be helpful for you to learn. Just really start talking to those people that you think would be super helpful. Team up, like we said, you can have a co-founder, you can have a team that you can just list in your application and let us know who's supporting you on the building of the company that you may have already found, who might not be a fellow, but they're just part of the team already, because we know that it's going to take a lot of people to build a company and develop your technology. So just think about who that team is, who your advisors are, who you might want as an advisor if you get this fellowship program, and start thinking about it. And if you do find a co-founder, apply right away with that person. You can't add someone later, so keep that in mind, that that's important to to decide early on during the application process, and you would be going through the whole selection process as a team. So if you do already have someone, great, you should apply together. If you want to do it as a solo founder, that's great. Either way, there's no right or wrong on that, and the committees don't look at you differently. It's just whether or not you're going to go through the process as a team or as a solo founder. Build tokenomics and models. We've got a whole bunch of resources on our website just to get you familiar with a lot of basic terminology about what that means, what kind of company you want to build, what kind of, what does that look like in terms of the business model that you want to bring forth. And then obviously conduct market research. A lot of folks do this through NSF I-Core programs, other accelerator and incubator programs. So if there is an opportunity to participate in one of those, or you've been selected to participate in one of those for the upcoming couple months in your school or wherever you are, I would encourage you to apply to those. A lot of our fellows also have gone through that just to kind of understand some of the market research and customer discovery that they want to bring in order to apply to the Activate Fellowship Program. And then learn, just keep learning about, read books, go to our website at activate.org/learn. We've got a whole bunch of innovator toolkits that you can learn about, but there's so many resources out there to just really help you become that, go on that science entrepreneur to just get you started. And then finally, if you haven't received communications by signing up at our, go to our activate.org apply webpage to get the link to the application. You can always email us at apply@activate.org. That question came up also a bunch. Who do I talk to? We're always here for you. We also are having a lot of events instead of summer, that should say fall, I guess now that we're in September. But we continue to, throughout September and October, have webinars like these, Q&A sessions, as well as community webinars to learn more about each individual community. And then we have office hours in October to continue to answer questions as you're ready to submit your application. And even some of our communities have in-person events that might be listed on there you might hear about. We encourage you to even attend some of those as well. And then you could always watch past webinars at our YouTube channel just to get more familiar with something that might have another question that you might have an answer for you there. And then finally, we'll send this slide out at the end of the time. This is a lot of information here, but these are some, before we kick it off to some of your questions, here are some just frequently asked questions we often get right away once we close these out. And again, the question is, do you take equity? And I feel like we've said this before, but definitely we don't, which allows us to, again, focus on the individual. We are here, we are fellow focused, we're a fellow first organization to help you develop your company and your technology, but also you as an entrepreneur. We offer a lot of professional development opportunities, programming that's really going to help you develop as a leader in your industry. The second one is life sciences. Life sciences is one of our verticals. However, it is one of our gray areas, especially if you are, I just want to reiterate this. Our fellowship does not currently support innovators developing technologies that only have application in mammalian health. So if your technology is just focused on human health or animal health, that's not really what we're looking for. You should be using the fellowship to explore human health as well as maybe one or two or additional verticals that's more likely to get funded if that is the case. And so definitely consider what other verticals your technology could maybe develop if you're in that life science category. And if your technology has a potential to, if there's a focus on pursuing the FDA approval, then Activate is probably not a good fit. If that's your main goal, is to get through the FDA approval, we just don't have the support of our team to really focus on that. So that's really why. However, there's always exceptions. We've got some companies that we are in that space who you could check out and see if they relate to you. Excuse me. Finally, we do not often also support only software-based innovations. We have some clear guidelines on that. Typically, there's a hardware component to those that we do. So if your software does have some sort of hardware component that you're working in or in the future will be working in, that's more likely for us to fund. But you can look at our FAQ in more detail on that if you have more questions, or contact us at any time. And that's the same with AI and machine learning based innovations as well. Okay, so we should stop sharing. We're going to answer some questions maybe that have come up, maybe some trends I haven't been paying attention. So I don't know if Nirwan, you have any that you've seen that we want to highlight or bring up, or Ava, if you've seen anything as well. I'm happy to start answering some of the questions that are in the chats.
Now, I've been answering away, but there are some really good questions. I think a lot of them have been answered around the eligibility. But people have questions, a lot of questions around their co-founders and how that works, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so like we said, you can apply up to two with a co-founder. There's when you apply, what you have to choose who the primary candidate is, and then who the secondary, or we call affiliate person might be. The primary candidate is that person who should be driving forward the technology. They should be making sure that they hit all the eligibility requirements that we talked about earlier. They're really driving the company and the technology forward. They're the person who's also going to be receiving the $100,000 living stipend. We can only pay the primary applicants, so just keep that in mind. The secondary person should also be committed to this full time, meet all the basic requirements. They're not going to receive the stipend, but they do receive all of the networking opportunities, the programming, the educational component, and we do consider them our fellows. And so they do receive a lot of that. The $100,000 goes to the research and development goes to the company, and that's really for just using for developing the technology. So it could be lab equipment, it could be lab space, it could be hiring an engineer, but that secondary person wouldn't be receiving the $100,000 a year. But we do encourage you, if that's just a lot of our affiliate fellows get a lot out of the fellowship. They definitely often talk about how great it is to be part of the network, how great it is to be part of the fellowship, and it's super beneficial for both people. I don't know if Nirwan, if you want to talk about anything that you've discovered with folks who are co-founders versus solo founders from the Houston office.
No, I think you hit everything about so there are 3 levels of association now Activate. There's the founder, the fellow who, as Rick mentioned, gets the funding. Then there is a affiliate fellow who you can apply with together, who would get access to the community and programming, but they aren't the ones being funded at the 100K. And then there are non-fellow co-founders who are maybe people on your founding team that might not qualify for Activate, but they are equal members of your company. They can participate in your community Slack channel and other community events, community activities, depending on each community does it differently. And so they too can be a part of the Activate ecosystem and ask for support and learn in that way, but they just wouldn't be directly supported by like the MD and the Activate staff. And they wouldn't come, non-fellow co-founders wouldn't come to immediately be included in Activate related events. It would be dependent on the community. There are tons of questions. So I'm trying to like go back through and see if there's a trend that we can answer live.
I see one about a couple of things. Success rate of the application. That's a really good question. So last year we received about 900 applications in total. When you apply, you must rank those communities that communities that you're most interested in. So if you do put the Boston community and you live in, let's say, Atlanta, then that means that you would be willing, if selected, or you want to move and relocate to the Boston community and participate in person in that community through the 2 years of your fellowship, maybe incorporate in that state, whatever you want to do. So, so that is the expectation, that if you select that community, you would be willing to, that you're open to relocating to that community if you are selected. You can only apply, and if you choose the anywhere community, because say you live in Memphis, Tennessee, and you want to stay in Memphis, Tennessee, we would encourage you to apply to the anywhere community, and then any additional in-residence communities that you again would be willing to relocate to. That being said, the anywhere community is a community that we do receive the most applications, not surprisingly. So that one's a little bit more competitive. Typically, we've said that our success rate is around 10% per community. Typically, our communities choose about 8 to 10 folks per year. And so maybe each community has about 100 eligible applicants. And then anywhere, it's probably double that. So it's probably closer to 5% success rate, just because that's more competitive.
And I
So
will just add there's a little extra asterisk for Houston. And so while you live outside, Texas is large, y'all. And so let's say you live in Austin, you live in Dallas, you will more than likely be triaged to the Houston community. We have fellows in both of our cohort years that commute in from Austin to programming every other week. And then once a quarter, we commute to Austin. And so that's the only place where the 75-mile radius doesn't apply in Houston.
yeah, and I think that aligns with, I think there's a question here about our applications are reviewed within communities or broadly. Again, if you you have the opportunity to rank in your application which communities you want, and so you would only be considered for those that you have chosen. But please keep in mind that if you rank a community, that means you're willing to relocate to that community. Yep, can someone be an active fellow while also having an active SBIR, STTR? Yes, we encourage people to apply to as many SBIRs, STTRs as possible. Again, if you have some hours of grant that you need to make up through the fellowship, that's fine if it's a couple hours, but again, we consider full-time being 32 hours a week. So as long as you can dedicate at least 32 hours plus a week to this program, then you can do that, as well as finish, take some time to do some grant work as well. Yeah, so I guess another question I'm seeing here is number of candidates per community. Yeah, we don't do it by industry, we do it by community. A lot of our funding comes from, I think this came up as well, we get funding for the Activate Fellowship from federal sources, state and local, federal government, state and local government, and philanthropy mostly. So that's where a lot of ours come in, which that's why we don't take any equity, and allows us to actually focus on the person, because we're not, that's just the way that our channels work really well and allow us not to have to take any equity. That being said, we don't have some tech areas that we're interested in right now. We do have some funding from the CHIPS Act, so we have some money set aside. I'm sorry, some slots set aside specifically across all of our cohorts for semiconductor technologies. And if you are in, I'm just going to do a plug here. We're going to be having a webinar with our CHIPS counterparts with at the Department of Commerce on October 1st. So if you are working in the semiconductor space or microelectronic space, please join that webinar on October 1st to learn more about that program. But otherwise, we're not looking for a set number of fellows per industry or vertical, which allows us to really cast a wide net. And so if you at least hit one or more of our verticals, please consider applying, especially if you're creating a hard tech product.
There are a few questions. They're really specific questions. I want to just knock out a few. I see one that asks, if you live in Connecticut and you'd be willing to travel to Boston, could you still apply? The answer is yes. I can't speak exactly for how the Boston community looks at commute, but they wouldn't automatically exclude you if in your ranking of communities, you had in there a plan for your commute. Another question was, are defense dual use applications acceptable? Absolutely. We have a bunch of fellows that are doing dual use applications. And can you and your co-founder live in different cities? Kinda. It just depends on what your specific situation is. And so again, if you are applying solo, but you have a co-founder, you are the only one who is required to be in the community if you're at an in-residence community. If you're applying together, then no, you both would be expected to. But I think the general rule of thumb as you go through this application process is if both you and your co-founder you think qualify and there's additional questions, we will ask them of you through the application process and we might have a conversation with you hey, both of you technically qualify, but it might make sense to drop your co-founder or switch who is the primary and who is the secondary. So there is a lot, we take a very human-centered approach to our application process. And so if there is some gray, we lean toward having an additional discussion or really digging in more versus that being a hard line.
Thanks, everyone. I see a question here also that I want to address. Whether or not you have to have started this comes up a lot with our questions, but whether or not you have to already have incorporated by the time of application, the answer is no. Some of our companies are already incorporated. Maybe they've been working on it for a few years and want to apply. Some folks just have an idea and are just like, hey, I want to give this a shot. I don't have a company yet, but I have, an idea and a technology that I think is going to work, and I just want to, apply for this. Either one works. You at time of application, but if you are selected, you must incorporate, I think, within 1 to 3 months, I think, after receiving the application, after receiving the fellowship. So by midsummer of next year, you should probably have incorporated. But at time of application, you do not have to have incorporated, and it has to be U.S. based. I think that came up as well. You must incorporate in the United States. That's our current model for now. And the answer is no, you are not required to have a patent pending. I think one thing we didn't address yet is the IP issue. And so I think that's something just to touch on. I think I've seen a lot of questions there as well. Our program is made to make sure that you own your IP going forward. If you're spinning out of a university and they've got a patent and you want to license it, you can do that like to spin out. But once you are starting your own company and any new development that's happening, we expect you to be owning that IP going forward. And so we understand that can be a tricky situation with your university, but we have our managing directors have worked with fellows to make this happen, as well as our team, so they can help you address that throughout once you become a fellow, how to make that happen. But you can also use an existing, it doesn't have to be a technology that you've thought of. It could be something that you found from a university or a lab, and you want to then develop it going forward. That is also a way that people come into the fellowship program.
Rick, can you speak to, there's a few questions about at what stage at tech development should people be at, even TRL levels? I have thoughts, but would love to hear yours.
Yeah, I think we say early stage. So we're technically TRL. I think we usually say 1 through 4, maybe. I think 1 through 3, 4. Again, super early stage. You have some customer discovery. You've done some market research. You have a proof of concept, and you're ready to hit activate. We are here to help you develop that technology, bring it into a prototype, to then hopefully after the 2 years, you're ready to get investors to invest in your product and scale it up. I don't know, Nirwan, if that aligns with what you were thinking, or you want to add anything?
Yes. So I think to Rick's point around TRL 1 through 4, but we've had people who are at TRL 6, right? But are still need help in other aspects of their company, whether it be connections or like developing themselves as entrepreneurs. I think when we as a committee think about this, lab scale validation is perfectly fine, right? You have to have a proof of concept. We need to have more than like a rough back of napkin sketch of, we think this works. We're still doing, there needs to be a validated proof of tech. And if you're still working on it through the fellowship, that's great. But it can't be so early that it's still in the concept phase. And so we've had fellows who are still working on some things and making some adjustments, but they aren't validating their core technical idea.
That's great. I think I see a question. I see a lot of questions specifically about the application. I want to reiterate that we're having an Activate Application 101 webinar similar to this tomorrow afternoon. And so if you want to sign up for that, go to activate.org/events, and you should be able to find that. There we're going to go over a lot of the specific requirements that are required for the application, the different components of the application, and any wording. I love this question in here that someone asked about. From your experience reviewing applications, are there any common mistakes that applicants make outside of not meeting the eligibility requirements? I think that tomorrow's webinar will go much more much deeper into that conversation. But I guess as a general rule, I think as you're thinking about preparing for your application, I just want to share that, again, make sure that it's not just about getting the funding, that you're not just here for one aspect of the program, that you are here to bring something to the community and get something out of the community aspect, right? That you want to be engaged, that you are on this journey as an individual, but also to hopefully make an impact on the world and help solve some of these really hard challenges that the world is facing right now. So really just think about all the components that we're offering and what you can bring and what you would get out of the fellowship writ large. I don't know.
Can I add one more
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Um, Please really look at the instructions. If the instructions say that it is a one-page resume, please submit exclusively a one-page resume. If the instructions say submit a 5-page deck, we can get technical on like, what was the first page? Can I put information on the first page, or can I have a 6-page deck? We would rather you ask, because we do have an early eligibility screen, and it's our only hard line, which is whether or not you are actually eligible, the bachelor's in 4 years, and if you followed the very few instructions that we had on the website. And so I implore you, some people come back for feedback like, well, what happened? Like, can you give me some direction for next year's application? And the committee wasn't able to actually review it because it was rejected at that eligibility stage. We don't even know what was in your application because someone just decided to submit their entire pitch deck, which was 20 slides, and we don't look at it. So I think like that is the most common mistake, well, most common and unfortunate for me, because we don't even get a chance to review your amazing technology or idea because the simple instructions were not followed.
Everyone, do you mind? I see a question here about lab resources. Do you
Yeah.
want to, address that question?
Yes,
Basically,
and so
what does Activate offer? And yeah, go ahead.
each community is very different. So for Berkeley, they are in partnership with Lawrence Berkeley Labs. And so part of your fellowship is getting space in LBL. In Houston, we do not have any partnerships with any local labs. And so we do have relationships with Greentown Labs or other smaller labs in the area, but it wouldn't be like if you apply to Houston, you'll have a place to set up. However, most fellows have found space for themselves. It just is a little bit more legwork. And in Boston and in New York, it's somewhere in the middle. A lot of people, I know for sure New York has a partnership with Columbia, and so I think there's part of a discount. I don't want to speak too firmly. And in Boston, they do have relationships across the city, and then obviously in anywhere, if you apply to anywhere, you get to stay in your lab wherever you are. And so to be clear, anywhere, current lab, or you use your R&D funds to set up a lab outside of your university when we think about IP issues. Berkeley, there's lab space directly connected to your fellowship. And in Houston, there's absolutely none. Boston and New York is somewhere in between. But everyone finds a way. I mean, we have a current C25 who moved international for the fellowship, brought all of her equipment, is currently setting up here in Houston. And so that's not a impermeable barrier.
Great, thanks. And I just want to do another plug. If there is an ecosystem or community that you're interested in and want to know specifically about lab resources, I will be talking about that in our community webinars all throughout September. So please, if like you're interested in New York City, Activate New York or Activate Houston, they're going to have a community webinar sometime this month. So they will address that specifically and give you more specifics about that.
I see a question about relocation assistance. Yes, so we do have relocation assistance. If you are moving to your community, it's not a lot of money. Don't think you're going to ball out of control, but it's absolutely, people have used it to relocate to their community. And if you're making a international move, it is double that. But can I share the number?
The number of what?
The number for the relocation assistance?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
okay.
Yeah.
So for continental moves, it's 4K, and for international moves, it's 8. And so we do assist you.
Yeah. There was a question in here that I was wanting to address, and I can't remember where it is. Applying for multiple programs. I think there are some programs that they can get both, like the Breakthrough Energy program as well as Activate. I think that there's certain ones that we can and can't. I need to follow up with you on that. So if there's anyone who is, because I can't remember what the rule is currently, but if there's anyone in that situation where you're applying to multiple programs that are similar to Activate, I think there's an opportunity in the application to let us know which ones those are, so that you should be able to fill that out in the application. And then there's certain ones that I think we are allowed to, and then others that we're not. And I think it depends a lot on where that funding is coming from, and so you can't double dip in certain like sponsorships, specifically around federal government. So if that is you and you're in that situation, just reach out to us at apply@activate.org if you want more answers on that.
I see a bunch of questions about funding, and I just want to highlight. I think, Rick, you've already said it. We support people who've have gotten SBIR, STTRs. Absolutely fine. We have a cap at 10 million in non-dilutive funding around eligibility, and
2 million.
no, non-dilutive, right? It's 2 million for dilutive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so it's 10 million.
Okay.
And actually, I'm gonna defer to our recruitment guy and say that guys didn't hear that. So the only cap that we have is 2 million in dilutive funding for you to be eligible for our fellowship. During your fellowship, we have different triggers for you to have to repay back your recoverable grant, but we do not have a cap on how much funding that you can go after. So if you raise a $10 million seed round, we are going to support you through that $10 million seed round. For the recoverable grant, there is a payback trigger, which of our hundreds of fellows over time, they have not been hit, but wanted to be transparent that it is a recoverable grant.
There's a question here about how stringent is a 4-year post bachelor's experience requirement. That's our basic eligibility review, basic eligibility requirement, and so we do check that during our eligibility process right after the applications close. And if you do not meet that, we would not move you forward. So please make sure you hit at least that requirement. If you're a little far from Berkeley, would it be better to do anywhere at Berkeley? If you are within 70 miles, I think is the rule, of a community, then you would apply to that community. If you're outside of that 70 miles, you could apply to anywhere as well as Berkeley if you're interested. Same goes with
I also see questions about visa sponsorship. So Activate absolutely welcomes foreign nationals into the fellowship. However, we do not sponsor your visa. You would incorporate your company and you would be employed by your company. A part of your application or interview process is asking like, what is your visa plan? However, just to be clear, like Activate doesn't sponsor. We might your MD might write a letter in support of your visa, but it's not that you work for Activate, you work for your company. And Rick, with 2 minutes left, could you I see a few things about the timeline in here. Could you just go over the application timeline again? When will things be reviewed? What people can expect?
Sure, great call out. So our application again closes on October 28th. And again, we are not having an extension deadline for those who may have come later. In the past we have, this year we are not. So if you applied previously, do not expect an application extension. It is final October 28th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's on our website, should be listed everywhere in our emails and everything like that. So please do that. Our selection process begins in November, pretty promptly. In November, And you should get notification of whether or not you've received a video interview in January by probably mid-December or so. And you would then meet with the selection committee in January. If you make it past that round, you'd be invited to our finalist week in March, early March, 9th to the 13th, where you would do basically a pitch to our virtual room of subject matter experts that we recruit, as well as our selection committee, to, again, make a case of why you would benefit from the fellowship, a little bit more about your technology and your company and your team if you're doing it as a solo founder or as with a co-founder. And then you would be notified around April, May time to start in June. And that's when we would kick off our retreat in June, July timeframe. I don't know if we've picked a date for next year. And then you would just hit the ground running after that in your community and start building your cohort. With that, we're at time. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for everyone participating. Again, if you have a burning question that didn't get answered, either sign up for another event at activate.org/events or send us an email at apply@activate.org. And we're going to send a survey out after this, along with the slides and the recording. So everything should be there for you. And if you have any questions that come up for that, just let us know. But thank you again for your time and for all the amazing questions. And thank you, Nirwan and Ava, for helping me answer all these great questions. And good luck with your application. We're really excited to see your application and get it submitted by October 28th. Thanks all.